Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from Child Protection Party. I mentioned some weeks ago that every now and again when I find an issue that I think we need to discuss, I'll just get online, have a conversation with you about it, and we'll kind of see where we go from there. So that's what I've decided to do today. So hello, how are you? Now I know everybody seems to be in the lockdown around Australia. Don't wish to brag, but here in South Australia we're doing okay at the moment, but that could very well change tomorrow and may find that we're also locked down. So just want to let you know that our thoughts go out to all those people that are currently experiencing a lockdown, and particularly those people, I guess, in New South Wales, for one thing, because there's lots of coronavirus over there, and it seems to be increasing daily, so it's getting out of control, I suspect. And in Victoria, where they have far few cases, but have also got a curfew. So it seems to be happening in a dramatic way around Australia, which means that there are a lot of people who are experiencing some form of anxiety and stress around coronavirus. I know I mentioned some weeks ago, I don't know whether I was on here or another channel or whether it was on our Wise Wedding and Weird channel, but I did mention that I know I myself from time to time feel a bit of anxiety around coronavirus, how it will affect particularly me as an old fart, and how it also will impact my children. I've got a son who lives in Sydney and a daughter who's on the Gold Coast in Queensland. So, and I do appreciate that in terms of my son, I was so concerned about him at one point that I contacted him and asked him what he was going to do about being vaccinated. He shot off actually and got vaccinated a few days later and got the Pfizer, thank God. So I just am concerned about everybody. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this particular post to you today is that I came across an article in The Australian which prompted me to start thinking again about young people and their mental well-being. And this article specifically refers to Victoria, but I suggest that the same applies all around Australia. And the question for me is, how much are we, or how are we considering the impact of coronavirus on young people? And I've done posts on this before, and but it seems to loom large as the virus becomes more and more widespread, and that there seems to be less and less being done for young people in particular, or at least less recognition. And I've been looking for perhaps for some verification that perhaps, number one, that there's not all that much that seems to be being done for young people at the moment around their mental well-being. How actually is the impact of coronavirus on young people? How does it impact them in terms of the aspects of their mental well-being? And there was an example where eating disorders apparently becoming more and more prominent as a result of the coronavirus. I don't know what extent, whether that's eating too much or eating too little, or just the fact that it's impacted. Hi Becca, good to see you. Thanks for coming aboard. As a party, thanks very much for being here as well. Watching from Adelaide Light Square. Okay. Well, it's not a bad sort of day out there today, I guess, but hope you're enjoying whatever's happening in Adelaide Light Square. But at least you're out and about, as opposed to Victorians and people in New South Wales who just don't seem to be able to get out there anymore because the impact that the virus has had. So how's it affecting your mental well-being? That's the question I'm really asking people today. And I also want people to be aware that that there are services that are available, and one of the services I think that, well, and I'll show you a list of where you can ring in a moment at the end of this presentation, but one of the things I think that's really important is that here at CPP, if there are issues concerning young people and their mental well-being, contact us. There are people, there's myself who's an accredited mental health social worker, happy to have a conversation with anybody who is suffering and that is not coping, I guess, in as a result of being locked away. Any young people, any parents dealing with young people who may be impacted as well, I'm more than happy personally to have a conversation with you You can contact me via email, or you can call Avery, he'll put you in contact with me. And we can have a conversation about what's happening for you. Also, there's a range of people around Australia that we may be able to refer you to for direct services, so that you can get the counselling and the therapy perhaps that you need to. Because sometimes it's just about having a conversation with someone who understands and is prepared to just listen to you. There are a range of other services that are available as well. And I'll just bring these up while we're here. So these are Lifeline, Kids Helpline, of course, it's very helpful. Men's Line, Suicide Callback Service, Beyond Blue is there, Headspace is there. Reach Out is their website, and any care leavers that are out there that are suffering as well. You also can log in. So rather than doing it later, I'll pop it on just at the end as well, so that we can continue to have a look at that as well. So if there's any issues that are concerning you, I guess all I'm saying is that you can contact us, and we will do our best to either work with you directly or refer you to somebody who can. Now, the article I wanted to have a look at there's two of them actually. There's this one. We'll talk a little bit about it. Oh, I've got to get rid of that. That's me. It's this one. And I hope I've got that centered enough. I haven't. It says at the top there, coronavirus, parents deserve the truth on the dangers of lockdowns. And it says here, the Andrews government is engaged in a deliberate and dangerous cover-up of critical mental health data that Victorians, especially parents of teenagers, deserve to see. We know this because the government is refusing to release regular reports compiled by the Victorian Agency for Health Information detailing an explosion in mental health cases, including eating disorders, suicidal ideation and self-harm treated by hospitals, psychiatrists and GPs. Now, I just need to have a few caveats around this. Number one, this is from The Australian. So I'm always sceptical of the Murdoch press because they tend to have a shot at almost everybody that sits to the left of politics, I guess, and they're continually having a go at Dan Andrews. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that this report has not been made public in the way that it should have been, but I do wonder about the fact that The Australian has got hold of it, telling us about it. How public does that then become? So maybe they didn't make it available in the way that they should have, but nevertheless, it seems to have still been made public through The Australian. So the government, so that's that bit, and then later on, the VAHI, people have written the report, obviously, note significant variances on pre-coronavirus levels across key psychiatric categories. Among the most alarming findings were, in the 6 weeks to March 28th, average weekly emergency department presentations for children and teenagers aged up to 17 was running at 319, which is a 27% increase on the 251 cases for the same period of 2020. Now, I don't know. As I said earlier, I am concerned, CPP are concerned about the treatment of young people, the recognition and identifying whether there's a mental wellbeing issue. So we're aware of all of that. I don't believe that it happens as it should. Whether these statistics are telling us that this is in itself a pandemic, I think, I forget his name now, it will come up in a moment, but it was referred to as sort of like a shadow pandemic. So there's this other pandemic happening in the background, which is about people's mental well-being. And I don't have a doubt about that because I know I myself experience some anxiety around all of this as well. I'm sure lots and lots of other people do as well. It's about how we handle it and whether or not it tends to take over our lives and govern how we think and feel about ourselves. So the important thing, though, here is that it says that it was a 27% increase on the 251 cases for the same period to 2020. What would have been worthwhile looking at would have been the 2020 figures compared to 2018 or 2017, I guess, so that we would have had a reasonable comparison. It also goes on to say that the number of teenagers rushed to hospital after self-harming and suffering suicidal thoughts spiked to 51%. Now, this is of a concern, rising from a weekly average of 98 in 2020 to 148 this year. So what we're seeing here is a specific and identifiable increase in the number of people that have been hospitalised as a result of self-harming and suffering from suicidal thoughts. So we've gone from emergency departments of teenage children and teenagers in 6 weeks to March the 28th, and then we've gone from that to self-harming, suffering suicide spikes of 148 this year alone, which is an increase of 51%. Now that figure is specifically concerning because clearly, if we had an increase of 2, 3, 4%, we could say that is just a we may not offer any sense of justification. There may not be anything for that. It's just the way that it's turned out. But to have a 51% increase is definitely of concern. The report confirms that teenage girls are among the hardest hit by the lockdown and suggests girls aged 12 and above are battling a wave of serious eating disorders. The 6-week average to February 28th saw non-patient treatment numbers jump from 279 in 2020 to 352. That's an increase of 26%. The number of new eating disorder cases in the same period increased by 34%, rising from a weekly average of 654 in 2020 to 878. And that, I guess, what I also would like to see is pre-pandemic figures, just to see whether this is increasing. So this does tell us that we need to be aware of what's happening for young people, and we need to be able to put into place services that may be able to help them. There is also a supplementary article, and I think this is disturbing. So this is where young people feel so helpless and hopeless about what's happening for them, they choose to take their own lives. So in this particular article, 8 teenage girls have committed suicide in the first 7 months of this year, a marked increase in the number of young people taking their lives in a tragic toll being closely watched by the Victorian Coroner's Court. The alarming rise has been recorded by the court amid a deepening youth mental health crisis that expert Professor Patrick McGorry has described as the guy who says shadow pandemic. And I don't know whether there's anything to specifically say that it's a pandemic. I guess we can argue that to some extent the figures certainly have increased. A 51% is significant increase, and so I guess we can say that there is this shadow pandemic to some extent. It goes on to say the alarming rise has been recorded by the court amid a deepening youth mental health crisis that he describes. I mentioned that. New court data reveals 8 girls committed suicide to July the 31st, up from just 1 in the first 7 months of last year. In the same period in 2019, Coroner's Court showed 3 teenage girls took their own lives, while the number was 4 in 2018. So there they are, at least making comparison between the previous years, and we're seeing a significant jump of 100% from 4 to 8. So this is, the court has noted a potentially higher than expected number of suspected suicides among women under 18 this year. The rise in suicide comes as the state is gripping by a teen mental health crisis that experts are linking to COVID-19 and lockdowns. So our plea is to you to be aware of what's happening for young people so that we can provide whatever is required for them. Now, I think that part of the issue here is just being aware of what's happening for young people, to note that there are young people who are struggling. And I mentioned this in one of my other posts, where young people may connect with social media, right? And they may be doing that in their bedrooms or some quiet place, and you may never know what interactions are taking place between them and whoever's on the other end of the internet. So we need to be conscious of what's happening for them, to have conversations with them about their mental well-being, to let them know that we do care about them, and that we will do what we can to help them. And there's a number of things they can do. As I said earlier, there are these particular places that you can go to. And there are services that will at least listen to kids. I think Kids Helpline is a fabulous one, so at least make that available. But I think more importantly, I think it's important that parents, caregivers, Department of Child Protection, you are not, the department, social workers are not necessarily in contact with kids about their mental well-being relating to COVID-19. They're more concerned about the kids' relationship with their foster parents and the department, and occasionally the parents, than they are about anything else. And so these other issues tend to get lost a little bit, I think. And the other point is that I want to make before I finish is that there's lots of parents who, because of COVID-19, no longer have access to their kids. And those people we need to start to think about and consider, because their relationships are being fragmented by COVID-19. And I think that's pretty damn unhelpful. Tracy says, I'll just read some of the messages. Pardon me if I just move to my left. We need to address the current lockdown and impacts it's having on children in out-of-home care that are being stopped from seeing. I was just talking about that. So that's good, Tracy. And that is where the department needs to work a little bit harder in order to maintain the parent contact, particularly where there's not a GOM18 order. And where they're still working through the courts, because as a result of that, a lot of the courts, a result of COVID, clearly the courts in New South Wales and Victoria have been closed down as a result, which prohibits the finalisation of any application, either to have a kids removed permanently or whatever, or to have them returned back to their families. So we need to be aware that these things are happening, and the department needs to work a little bit harder to make sure that the contact with parents is maintained. So there's someone there from Regional Vic. Hi Zara, I hope you're doing okay. And let us know actually how you are coping. That'd be interesting information for us. And also this issue around, are you able to contact your kids? What restrictions are put in place in terms of meeting with your kids. Remember, most families who don't have an issue with having had their kids removed, not an issue with DCP, they have their kids in their home. They have this thing happening. It might be, and those parents may complain that they're doing homeschooling and having to attend to their kids 24/7 when, if at least they go to school, they get a break. And I think we need to think about what is it like though for parents who want to have their kids home, who crave for their kids to be with them, and they're not. So for those parents, my thoughts go out to you, because you're the ones that are missing out greatly as a result of not having kids with you. I have researched long-term effects. There is limited research data with many gaps in research regarding what out-of-home care impacts are on with children with disabilities in long-term. Actually, Trace, I just need to say that there is so little research done on kids in care, generally. Kids leaving care, the trauma of kids being in care, the trauma of kids being taken from their parents. There's zero type, well, there's some, but there's very little research done in that particular area, because at the end of the day, no one seems to care about these kids that are in care, I think. Tracy's same in a dot. Yeah, thanks Peter for being on board. Really appreciate that. Haven't heard from you for ages. Would love to have another chat. Which reminds me, so we've got 4 or 5 interviews scheduled for over the next week or so, which is something I've been working towards for a long time, trying to get people involved. I encourage you, if you want to have a conversation, which can be just an audio, it can be video, audio, it can be hiding your face, it can be changing the voice, it can be any way to hide you if you want to be hidden, and it can be a live feed, it can be a recording which we can put up later after editing, it can be a range of things, whatever you want. The point is, at the end of the day, we want to hear your story. We want to get it out there. We've had a few fabulous people contact us over the last week in relation to this, and we're putting together a whole stack of interviews starting tomorrow. So get involved with us around this, because it's really important for people to be able to tell their story. It's important that we find a way to do that for you. You have to wonder what happened to respite care. This is Bex. Understand why they take children off the carer without offering respite. Can I just say, Bex, you just reminded me that tomorrow night we're having a group session on MS Teams, and you can let us know if you want to join that by hitting our Facebook page where we talk about, where we have a post on this meeting tomorrow night. So it's for people like you, Bex, and others to join with us and have a conversation. I think it's at 7 o'clock Australian Central Standard Time. So if you want to get on board, have a conversation with a whole lot of other people and hear back from us. There's a lot of people within CPP that are on the executive who had heaps of experience around child protection type issues, who can also give some suggestions, I guess, as to how you can do things differently. But it's also an opportunity for you to talk about, to some extent, your story. But what we're interested in is how we can implement some change and how some of those ideas may impact you in terms of the work you're doing if it's about getting kids returned to you. So Lynn says, what other steps are being taken to bring this to light? I don't know what exactly you're talking about. I think the way, look, I'll just talk generally about what a political party can do. We send out lots of letters. People behind the scenes don't understand what's going on. Number one, we field lots of phone calls from people. Number two, where there are what we perceive as gross injustices, we will contact the department in relation to that in your particular state. If you've got an issue with regard to a social worker, there's a page in our on our web page that where you can make a complaint. We gather those complaints together and we send them off to the appropriate minister of whatever state that might be referring to. We are hoping to be able to gather enough. I'm going to speak about this forever. Actually, we're gathering enough information as to what you are saying are the problems that are concerning you, so that when an election comes up, we will be so well armed with the types of things that you need so that you can have your kids either returned to you or have better access, or to be able to have your voice and your children's voices heard. They'll be able to be heard through us, who will then be able to apply some sort of media coverage, I guess, to a lot of the issues that are of concern to you, to let other people know what is happening, to right the injustice that has been permitted to allowed to pervade the child protection system forever. And our job is to help change that, Lynn. So when you said as a political party, other steps have been taken to bring this to light, they're the things that are bringing everything to light. And having these conversations. You know, we have, probably not this one because we don't have that many joiners yet, but we have thousands of people that do wind up connecting with us. I post this post to YouTube, Twitter, and it's going to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook at the moment, and we're cross-posting to a lot of other sites who get to see some of the stuff we're talking about. And it's about people becoming involved. You know, political change does not take place by simply people idly sitting back and doing nothing. It takes place by people like myself and Avery and Wendy and Clinton and a whole lot of other people involved with CPP who are interested in making changes that are important to you because we care. And so that's going to happen. That's going to happen at some point. Now, we've been working on it for 6 years, which is not a long time for a political party, I guess. We have no representation in Parliament, but when we do, and we're hoping that we will, it will make a difference that's going to affect and impact every one of you. So please join us so that we can make that difference. Lynn says, I ran for a federal election for One Nation. Clearly you didn't get in, Lynn. But you may have a chance with us. I don't know. If you're interested in that sort of stuff. And Lynn, if you want to know what our platform is, you can go onto our webpage and you can have a look at our policies there. And if you have any further policies that you would like to put forward, which is about improving outcomes for kids generally. It's not always about child protection. It's about improving outcomes for kids generally. So, and it's about rectifying and confronting justice. And it's about equality and fairness. And it's about being non-judgmental in terms of the way people are conducting their lives, and to be able to assist them by being caring and empathetic. That's what we're about. And if those are things that interest you, then join us. Have a conversation with us and get involved with one of our branches around the country. So, look, thanks everybody for being with me. If I have any other of these sorts of issues, I will raise them. We'll do a live feed and we'll spread the word. And could you do what you can, incidentally, in sharing this particular post if you're on Facebook? And if you're on YouTube, could you subscribe, like, ring the bell? And if you're on Twitter, if you're on Twitch, could you just follow us? So thanks everybody. Thanks for being with me today. Lovely being with you, and take care. Look after yourselves and be kind. Okay?